Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry. Today we'll be recording episode 39, which will be the second episode of Chapter 5. So in the first episode we played just first day or two of Chapter 5, and important setup, but relatively uneventful so far. We see Shion escape from St. Lucia's and return to Okonomiya, where we kind of learn that she's not going to be able to kind of like operate in public really right now. Her and Mion had to get together and kind of talk and basically imply that whenever you need to be seen in public, I'll go missing for a little bit. And so like Shion got a job through that. I like a relative who was, oh God, what's the word? Who was kind of on her side of things, didn't think that going to that school was necessary, thinks she should get to live her own life. But I think the big thing was, one, this is the summer of 1982, so we're going to kind of see, I think we're going to see here soon Satoshi show up, which would be interesting to see that relationship between Satoshi and Shion. Kind of see how that plays out, if it's as important to things as right now it is in my theories. In my theories, a few of them kind of rest on the fact that Shion was very close to Satoshi, and if she's not as close as it seemed, well, that's a problem. But we'll kind of see how that plays out. I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of gets introduced this episode. He showed up in a tip at the end of chapter 2, so it's not impossible. But yeah, so we're going to kind of see what kind of life Shion has in Okonomiya in the summer of 1982. Let's go ahead and continue. It's a very quiet afternoon, as always. Since I can't go outside as myself, I have to match schedules with Mion when I go shopping. I've gotten used to it by now, so it's no longer a hassle. Because of this, I naturally have to buy things in bulk. Today I shuttled between shops in my home.
あれは買った、これも買った。ああ、そうだ。今日って100円セールの日じゃなかったっけ？忘れてた。
Being in a good mood, I spun around with my arms spread out. I felt like a little whirlwind. My arm hit a motorcycle parked on the sidewalk. Obviously, it wasn't where it was supposed to be. Oh man, are we about to get... Oh, this is kind of interesting. Wait, are we about to get the chapter 2 Keiichi incident, but in chapter 5 and with Shion?
もう何こんなとこに止めてるの誰？
Wow, we're getting right into things. I give it a kick with no hesitation. There were 3 motorcycles lined up there in a row. They all fell like dominoes, so we have seen this before. It was a beautiful sight. This is fun, I thought. Being in such a good mood made me leave my guard down. I didn't realize that the owners of the motorcycles were right nearby. They looked pretty scary. They grabbed me by the neck and dragged me to a dark alley. And then they called me all kinds of names. Everything was happening too quickly for me to grasp what was going on. It's the same guys, too. There's no way it's the same exact guys. Surely it's just the voice actors. Although this is like exactly what they said last time. That's actually kind of borders on weird, but... Whoa. They can't really talk properly. I didn't have a clue what they were saying. I had to translate their alien tongue into normal human words in order to understand. We are very upset because you knocked down our motorcycles. You should immediately pay for the repair and compensation. Yeah, that was probably it. That's our offer. What do you say? We'd be happy to listen to your opinion. Something like that?
ああ、ごめんなさい。さすがにそろそろ翻訳不能かも。
I know what they're trying to say, but somebody has to warn them about the way they park their motorcycles. It wouldn't be fair to those who obey the rules if there were no punishment for those who disobey them. This is an accident, but it must also be God's will. Wow. she has some strong opinions on things. And that's a really interesting thing to keep in mind about Shion. I actually might have to write that down after I finish this episode. That she very strongly believes that those who break rules must be punished. That's interesting. But God, you can use me to punish these guys, but how will you compensate me later? What? I heaved a huge sigh. Of course, I wasn't afraid in this situation at all, because it wasn't a dangerous one for me. These three guys were yelling at the top of their lungs at a girl. They didn't look good doing it. They had too many disadvantages. First, there was the differences in gender and the number of people, Even if I did something wrong, as men shouting at a woman, nice, it didn't make them look like they were in the right. Added to that, there were three of them. It already looked like it was going to get violent. Second, the location. Taking a girl into a dark, narrow alleyway is already a bad idea. And on top of that, they're asking for money, not just an apology. Thanks to these facts, the public will be on my side. So this was a fight they couldn't possibly win. The only way for them to win would be to take my money before somebody finds out. Considering that, taking me to this narrow, secluded alleyway might have been a smart move, since fewer people will find out about this situation. I knew how slim their chances of winning were. From the very beginning, they'd picked the wrong girl. I'm Mio Sonozaki now. It'd be foolish to mug her in Okonomiya. Soon enough, the people of Hinamizawa would notice me and gather round. They don't spare mercy for their enemies, no matter what. The punks didn't know this area well. If they did, they'd have known how silly it was to rob Mion. Plus, the alleyway isn't always as empty as they assumed. This side street is a shortcut which local people frequently use on their way home. In the late afternoon, many people will be passing through here. That time had almost arrived. If I held off a little longer, the street would soon be filled with people. Then the punks would have to go away. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to wait in order to win. This was a simple fight like that. While they could hurl abusive language at me or lift me up by my collar, they weren't actually going to resort to violence. Cheers to the educational system for ingraining the ladies first mindset. But as a wicked person, I wanted to toy with them a bit, even though I could win this by waiting. I wanted to paint them as even more villainous, drive them into a corner that would be even harder to talk their way out of. That demonic desire was rearing its horns. To put it plainly, I'd only need to act as the poor, helpless victim a little further. Like the pathetic, pitiful, tragic heroine everyone wants to sympathize with. In a case like this, I shouldn't start crying immediately, because they'd get nervous and draw back. If it were a truly threatening situation, that would work, but I needed something different here. I'd pretend to be strong at first. In fact, I thought, why don't I challenge them? And eventually I'd start trembling, my voice would fade, and I'd get tears in my eyes. It'd be even better if I played the role of a strong girl who's slowly giving in to fear. Ion and I are probably the only ones who are capable of pulling that kind of stuff off. Well, I'm probably better than her.
そんなにしつこく言わなくてもいいでしょ。悪かったって言ってるじゃないですか。
I talked back with a little hesitation. Am I getting tears yet? Yes. By the way, I've heard men can't shed tears on command. I feel sorry for them. The three punks faltered a bit due to my sudden change in attitude, but they soon started yelling at me again. I had to keep it going. That way they'd blatantly look like they're picking on a helpless girl.
もう許してください。
Probably not a huge deal, but did she not consider the fact that if she's kind of taking the place of Mion, this kind of makes Mion look a little weak? Probably not a huge deal, but... She's so manipulative.
なんだよこら。さっきまでの伊勢はどこ行ったんだよ、にゃろ。
そんなのだって
そんな今頃泣くくれなら調子くれてんじゃねえんだよ、たくよ。
It looked like they were laying off a bit. Did I ever do it a little? It'd be boring if they let me go now. At that moment...
いい加減にしないか。
Oh, there he is. Okay, okay. Satoshi's jumping in? Are we for real? What a guy. Finally seeing Satoshi is so crazy. I mean, I'd figured he was going to get sprites. And like I said, I figured we'd even probably see him this episode, but still feels so crazy to me, like actually seeing him.
もう泣いているじゃないか。 やめてやれ!
A boy around my age appeared. He was skinny, and I was gonna say, I don't know, I guess I shouldn't have expected him to be some, like, ripped, like, athlete or something. They never really made him out to be that, but for some reason I didn't expect him to be, like, I guess kind of as small as he is. Like, I said, like, he's pretty skinny. Like, I don't know. Nothing wrong with it. The design fits him now that I'm thinking about it, but for some reason I saw him and I'm like, oh, he's kind of smaller than I thought. A little more meek, I guess. He looked weak. Yeah, he looked younger than he probably was. He also looked smart. He bravely glared at the punks. The punks turned away from me to face the boy instead. The boy looked a bit agitated when the punks started yelling at him. They sure were ruthless, but the boy must have known that from the beginning. He must have known that he was going into a dangerous situation, yet he didn't hesitate. He must have wanted to shout back at them, but he'd probably never used that kind of language in his life, so he couldn't have expressed his feelings out loud. He might have not even known what to say, so he just kept on glaring at them, to let them know that he wasn't going anywhere. The three punks, though, might have thought he was just lost for words in his fear. But I knew different. The boy was overpowering them with nothing but his will. The punks were losing, so they resorted to violence. Are they gonna beat bro? Oh, they're beating bro! Oh my! They grabbed him and knocked him down. They hit, kicked, and tossed him around. It looked painful, but I knew. It was his victory. In the end, local passerby stopped the punks. They made no further fuss and just went away. The boy stood up. He was covered in dust. He smiled when our eyes met, and asked me if I was all right. He didn't look particularly okay himself, though.
あんたもよくもまあ勝てない喧嘩を買う人ですね。次からは勝てる算段がついてから喧嘩を買うことを深くお勧めしますけどね。最初は迷ったよ。
He laughed, saying that he was watching from the beginning. That meant he had the option to walk away, but instead he worked up the courage and stepped in.
そういうのは勇気って言わず、身の程知らずとも言うかな。ミオンは口が減らないね。助けてくれてありがとうくらい言ってくれよ。泣いてたじゃないか。別に泣いてなんかいません。あれはちょっとした演技で。いいよ、演技でも。ちょっと信じてないでしょ。私が本当に泣き出すと思いますか？思わないよ。天下御免の園崎ミオンが不良にいじめられて泣き出したなんて誰も思わないよ。何を笑ってるんですか？全然信じてないでしょ。私が半泣きなんてするわけない。信じるから。
Bro does not believe her. I realized one thing. He must be one of Sis's friends. He didn't seem to realize I'm her twin. He thought I was Mion with a different hairstyle. Mion and I had to live separately since before we went to elementary school. Mion was in Hinamizawa, and I was in Okinomiya. I lived in a totally different environment from her. So it's not strange that people don't know me. Actually, only very few people know I exist. I almost told him that I'm not Mion, but I managed to stop myself. Shion shouldn't be here. He's from Hinamizawa. It wouldn't be good if he thought he saw a Mion look-alike in Okinomiya, so I had to act like Mion. Dealing with him would be more difficult than handling those punks could be.
でもま、ミオンにも少しは女の子らしいところがあったんで安心したよ。なんだか妙に引っかかる言い方ですけど、つまりはどういうミオンのことだから、なんだか珍妙な憲法でも使って瞬く間に撃退してしまうんじゃないかって期待してたね。だから泣き出した時は正直驚いた。あれは泣き真似だったって言ってるじゃないですか。さっきから人の話ちゃんと聞いて。
He gently put his hand on top of my head and stroked it as if stroking a kitten. Bruh, not the Rika treatment. I could remember somebody doing that to me when I was little, but it had been quite a while since somebody stroked my head. I didn't know what to do. Why did it make me so embarrassed? My face reddened all at once. I couldn't say anything.
バカにしてます？ひょっとして。
I stuttered in embarrassment. He looked calm, as if he was used to doing this.
何でもいいよ。よかったじゃないか。よかったって、何がです？無事で。
He smiled while he kept stroking my head. His smile looked divine. He wasn't going to stay for long. He'd already saved me from those guys after all.
じゃあ、僕は行かなきゃならないから、そろそろ行くね。あ、うん。
I wanted to go through all the steps of meeting someone for the first time, but he didn't. As far as he was concerned, he just saved a friend from danger and wanted to leave quickly to avoid seeming pretentious. He and Mion must be friends who knew each other well, so I couldn't bring myself to ask, "What's your name?" Mion's friend smiled once again. His smile looked as refreshing as a clear blue sky. This time he smiled a bit mischievously.
安心しなよ。ミオンが泣いてたなんて誰にも言わないから。もっとも言ったところで誰も信じないだろうけどね。天下無双の委員長が泣いてたなんて絶対誰も信じない。
He patted the dust off his butt once again. He walked back to the sunny main road, away from the dark alley. Then he turned around.
じゃあまた明日、学校でね。うん、学校で。
He disappeared into the brightly lit street. I continued to sit in the gloomy alleyway. I could no longer see him. I was just staring absent-mindedly at the bright light. It was the first time I met Satoshi-kun. Yeah, so obviously it's, I mean, like I mentioned this before, that it's obviously, this is, not even allowed to walk freely under the sun. I met a boy in a sunny day. How come a perverse girl like me fell in love with his innocence? Notebook, page 5. I mean, like, yeah, that's the least shocking thing I've ever heard. Like, oh my god. That was when she, like, that was when she fell in love with him. I mean, oh, need my desk. Nice. Yeah, okay, so that was an interesting scene. That was an interesting one. Dang, I feel bad for Shion. Dang. I have no clue if they're gonna, like, kind of get close and Satoshi's gonna kind of reciprocate a bit. But I think eventually the difference between Mion and Shion has to be made. Surely he's not gonna go think, like, I'm sure they'll meet a few more times. Surely they're not gonna have all of the meetings with Shion as Mion, right? Surely not. Surely not. That would be evil, man. That would be evil. I feel like everybody in this game already has it so rough, and we know things are going to end poorly for Satoshi. Man, I'm holding on hope that somehow Satoshi's alive for real. I don't know. For Shion's sake, for Satoko's sake. They don't... I don't know. It really, just massive L's for those two characters, and obviously for Satoshi, if, like, Satoshi's, like, dead. Right? And, like, unavoidably dead. But... we'll have to see. This is already a tragedy in the making, though, this chapter.
その特徴的な雰囲気と気安く頭を撫でる癖は間違いないね。サトシ君って言うんだ。
The boy from earlier is called Satoshi Hojou-kun. Mion said that he's always daydreaming, so she didn't believe that he saved me at first.
普段はしっかり者の妹にいろいろと尻を叩かれてるな。
Yeah, but he saves her in the end. Well, in a way. He does what he thinks will save her.
妹がいるんだ。妹は貞子って言ってね。なかなか面白いやつだよ。なかなか悪知恵が働くしね。そのくせ追い詰められると泣くし。見てて退屈しない子だね。まあ、最近はいろいろとあってね。ちょっと調子を落としてるけど。
His sister came up naturally in the conversation. I tried to soak up every scrap of information about Satoshi-kun. Why? Why am I trying to ask so much about him? As I asked myself that, the feeling I got when he stroked my head came back to me. I must have been blushing.
もしもし、シオン？ごめん。 聞いてる聞いてる。そもそもね、サトコがおばと折り合いが悪いらしいんだよね。サトシは大人だから、その辺はうまく立ち回ってるんだけどさ、サトコは嫌なことがあると素直に表情に出しちゃうからね。
What Sis told me was very interesting. She told me that the parents of Satoshi-kun and his little sister are dead. Satoshi-kun and Satoko are now living with their uncle and aunt. They don't seem like very respectable people. They're always fighting, and the uncle is cheating on the aunt. He mostly lives with his mistress. Satoshi-kun and Satoko entered into that unwelcome environment. What surprises me the most is the fact that Satoshi-kun's parents were the Hojou couple who were the leaders of the pro-dam activists. That fact must have added something to the situation. I don't know what kind of stance the uncle and aunt took during the dam conflict, but they must have taken some indirect blows. Satoshi-kun's parents died after bothering them so much, and even left them their children. The uncle and aunt obviously can't love those kids. Things have gotten worse this past year, too. Women can be really nasty bullies. Sometimes it doesn't matter who they're bullying, even if it's a kid. On top of that, women tend to care less about their propriety than men. As a result, Satoko seems exhausted with it all. I can imagine Satoshi-kun bravely protecting his little sister, just like when he saved me.
なら、サトシ君も普段は疲れてるってことになるのかな。え？サトコがおばにいじめられるたびに、きっとサトシ君は妹をかばってると思う。
Elite read.
妹が疲れるのと同じくらい、サトシ君も疲れてると思うのは、私の考えすぎ？どうだろうね。
Had I said something wrong? Mion sounded a bit taken aback, so that meant Mion can't tell how he's feeling, because he's always wearing that blank look. So she never considered it. How can she be that insensitive even though she's around him all the time? I was amazed to realize that.
まあそんな話はいいや。で、彼は普段はどんなことをしてるの？文系みたいだから読書とか好きなわけ？想像に漏れずに普段は読書して過ごしてるよ。最近読んでる本はね、なんて言ったかな。
I continued asking about him, about what he likes, dislikes, and what he thinks about. I asked Sis all these questions because I wanted to know more about him. It was the first time I'd ever been that interested in somebody. I didn't want to admit that I had feelings like that. Did I fall in love just because of a stroke on the head? Am I stupid or what? When I remember the feeling of his hand on my head, my heart feels tingly. I tried doing it myself, but it didn't feel the same. I'm stupid. What am I doing, stroking my own head?
おねえ、私もうダメだ。バカになっちゃった。え？何を突然。気色悪い声で笑い出して。おねえにはわかるまい、この気持ち。
Oh Lord. When would I see him again? I felt as if my suffocating life had finally grown brighter. Man, I have bad news for you. This is already, like I said, this is the makings of a tragedy already. Oh no. Why, Higurashi? I mean, I kind of knew what I signed up for, but oh my goodness. The life I lived really was beginning to suffocate me. I couldn't go out freely, and I always had to make arrangements with Mion before going to work. I thought my life would improve after escaping from the school, but in reality, it wasn't that easy. It's not healthy to live like this for too long, without any friends to hang out with. I felt like I was hibernating. I'd started to feel the dangers of falling into boredom. All I could think of now was Satoshi Hojou-kun's face. I'd only met him briefly, but my encounter with him had a great impact on my new life. I felt like something exciting was going to happen. Really, I was hyped up like a little kid. The more I thought about it, I realized I'd been thinking about him a lot lately. This might be a crush. I felt a little ridiculous idolizing him in such a romantic way, though. Then, out of the blue, I got a chance to see him again.
あれ?
I saw a familiar face at twilight in the park. He was sitting on the swing. He looked like he was zoning out, or maybe deep in thought. He didn't notice me, even though I was right in front of him. I reminded myself to speak and act like Mion before talking to him.
へ
That's how you act as Mio. I guess it's not inaccurate though.
何やってんのこんなとこでさ。ミオンか。びっくりしたな。そんなに驚いてるようには見えないけどね。さっきからいたんだけど、ずっと気づかなかった？そうなのかい？ごめん、気づかなかったよ。
Bro, you can already tell he's cooked. Mion really does not pay attention to things like that, I suppose. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I kind of know that, like, mentally he's already cooked at this point. But you can see just, like, I can already feel like you can just see the signs. Like, I don't know. Zoning out in a park. Like, I mean, not that that's that weird, but, like, I don't know. You can just tell. He smiled self-derisively and shrugged. Is that how you say that word? He looked depressed. He is! Like something was troubling him.
何か悩み事でも？聞いて楽になるものなら聞くし、力になれるものなら惜しまないけど。いや、別に。私はサトシ君には一個借りがあるからね。それとも何？おじさんじゃ力になれないと思ってるわけ？
She knows Mion pretty well, huh?
見くびられたもんだな。別に、ミオンの力を借りたら。ほう、それは何？私ごとき女の手は借りたくないってこと？
Thinking him unfair, I puffed up my cheeks in a sulky gesture. Satoshi-kun noticed that and smiled.
違うんだよ、ミオン。僕に実力がなくて、ここ一番で打てなかったってだけのことなんだよ。
I mentally rifled through all the information about Satoshi-kun that Sis had given me. He doesn't look like much of an athlete, but apparently Satoshi-kun belongs to a junior baseball team. They're called the Hinamizawa Fighters. I doubt he's very skilled, since I didn't hear much about his contributions to the team. Maybe that's why he doesn't tell many people that he's a member. Given how down he felt as a result of messing up, though, he must be fairly dedicated. I deduced all that from what Sis told me, carefully chose my words so as to sound like her.
なんだ、そんなことで落ち込んでるわけ？そんなことでって簡単に言ってくれるな、ミオンは。
I pat his back while chuckling. Satoshi-kun would probably call me insensitive. I knew I should listen to him, rather than trying to cheer him up. Acting like Sis was probably the wrong thing to do in this case. I had no choice. This was just how she'd react in this situation.
それなら落ち込むんじゃなくて、なお一層練習に打ち込んで次のチャンスを目指すのが適当ってもんでしょうが。こういう時は練習しかないよ、練習。まあ、サトシ君に相手のピッチャーに小細工をしてまで勝ちたいという執念があるなら、おじさんいろいろと協力できるかもしれませんけどね。
Quite the actor.
ずるしても何の意味もないよ。
Why is that face so funny to me?
はあ。
Satoshi-kun hung his head after letting his regrets out with a big sigh. Surrender, defeat, resignation. Were all visible in that gesture of his.
諦めがいいのか未練たらたらなのか。やっぱり男に生まれたからには一度くらいは晴れ舞台でスターになってみたいでしょう。
Satoshi-kun grinned and said yes.
もちろんヒーローを目指すのが花だけど、それが目的で野球をやってるわけじゃないよ。純粋にボールを投げたり打ったりするのが楽しいからやってるんだよ。ミオンでもそういうのわかるよね。おじさんはそういうのは私は結果が一番であるならどんな種目でも大好きだし、一番になれないのに大好きなんてものはあんまりよくわかんないね。もうミオンらしい答えだな。
Yep. Having realized that I'm trying to make him feel better, he laughed along. He didn't look depressed anymore. I guess he was just feeling down because of the game. He wasn't as depressed as I thought, and no, it's definitely more than that. Maybe I just jumped to conclusions when I saw him sitting alone in the park.
でもミオンは一番になるためにいろいろと努力をするからね。それは偉いと思うよ。うん。
He smiled gently and stood up, then he started stroking my head. All of a sudden, I totally wasn't prepared for that.
あ
I thought this when he did this last time, but how can he stroke somebody's head so easily? I felt like I had turned into a little kid. Memories from kindergarten came to mind. My face must have been red. I felt embarrassed, but also like I was in heaven. Satoshi-kun stroked me as though petting a cat. I was blushing with my eyes closed. I felt helpless, like a girl being treated by the dentist with her mouth open and her eyes shut. What? I mean, fair enough, I guess, but that's such a crazy analogy. Satoshi-kun didn't seem to notice my feelings at all. He didn't seem to care. I hate him. With my eyes still closed, I waited for him to finish. He suddenly withdrew his hand.
じゃあ、僕はそろそろ帰るよ。おばさんに野球の帰りに買い物をしてくるよう頼まれてるから。あ、
My voice faltered. I was so embarrassed.
買い物なら、夕飯の買い物。あれ、ミオも買い物するんだ。お手伝いさんが全部やってくれるって言ってなかったっけ？
Shoot. Messed up. In the main Sonozaki house, the maids do everything. Therefore, Mion hardly goes grocery shopping. She's bragged to some people about that. I should have known better. Still, it wouldn't be too hard to find an excuse.
町に遊びに来るつもりでいたから、買い物を私が引き受けてきたわけよ。お分かり？ミオンにしては珍しいね。普段はそういうのめんどくさいって言って嫌がりそうなのに。
Oops, we messed up a little.
そういうのを余計なお世話って言います。頭撫でないで。
So we're a little bit evil. Satoshi-kun seemed to be having fun with how embarrassed I'd get when he patted me. Anyway, I managed to talk my way out of it. He didn't seem to really care about the details. You think he's noticed by now? That I wouldn't be shocked if he's already picked up on the fact that this isn't actually Mion. While walking with Satoshi-kun in the shopping district of Kami Ishiki, it suddenly occurred to me. Why had I messed up? I'd known Mion would never go grocery shopping. What an amateurish mistake. Did I make that mistake when I was pretending to be Mion? No. I was probably speaking as Shion. I couldn't keep lying to myself. I had to just admit. It was simply because I wanted to spend as much time with Satoshi-kun as possible. It was easy to see why I was so attracted to him. I'd found something intriguing in my boring life, and I didn't have to feel tense because he thought I was somebody else, etc., etc. His easygoing nature made him fun to be around, and his habit of petting people on the head was fun too. From these symptoms, I could tell I was embracing the feeling of love. I was just casually enjoying that feeling. It wasn't that I fell in love with him. I was just having fun. Let's be for real right now. So we do a little bit of lying to ourselves. I could simply spend some fun time with Satoshi-kun without having to think too much.
ブロッコリーってどれだっけ？
Brother. There's no way. Surely broccoli has to just be an extremely unpopular vegetable in Japan or something, right? There's no way.
緑だっけ？黄色だっけ？
You too? Oh no. Can he even tell them apart?
サトシ君、そっちはカリフラワー。サトシ君ってひょっとしてキャベツとレタスの区別がつかないタイプ？それはひどいよ。これでも精一杯区別してるつもり。
Satoshi-kun. This music's funny. Goofy music. Satoshi-kun stared at the heaps of broccoli and cauliflower. After thinking for a while, he reached out for the wrong one.
それ違う。サトシ君の買い物は見ててハラハラしますね。見てるこっちは楽しいけどさ。参ったな。サトコと一緒の時にも迷うんだよ。ブロッコリーとカリフラワーはどっちが何色だっけってね。あんたら兄弟2人揃って面白すぎです。
Sis had told me that Satoshi was a flaky big brother to his nagging little sister. I hadn't met Satoko, but she must have been having a tough time dealing with Satoshi-kun. He stumbles over everything he buys, after all.
それは調理塩。胡椒とか混じってますから、卓上塩とは異なります。え、そうなの？ほら、 確か理科の実験で塩と胡椒を分離するのを確か。言い訳はいいから棚に戻す。こっちが普通のお塩ね。で次は。
Brother is hopeless.
ミオンがいてくれると買い物が楽で助かるよ。
Now that I think about it, they actually did kind of mention this in chapter 3, that in a lot of ways he was kind of hopeless.
サトシ君、頭良さそうに見えて社会生活に支障ありすぎです。
Book smart with no household knowledge at all.
もう少しお勉強した方がいいと思います。それはひどいな。あった、これかな。ひょいひょい。だからそれは違う。何でもカゴに放り込む前に値段と何人分かをよく確認する。
My first impression of Satoshi-kun was that he was strong and reliable, but the more I spoke to him, the more surprised I was at how clumsy and unreliable he was. How do I put it? It was hard to leave him alone. He was dangerous on his own. If he wasn't careful, he might start wondering, do you cross the street when the light is red? Or was it green? And get himself run over by a dump truck, sweat drop.
1780円になります。スタンプカードはお持ちですか？はい、あります。あれ、どこかな。すみません。ちょっと見当たらないんで、今度でいいです。
I finished checking out, ignoring Satoshi-kun as he fished through his wallet full of receipts.
ひどいな、ミオン。スタンプちゃんと押さないともったいないよ。あんた、夕暮れ時のお買い物ラッシュの時にのんびりと財布を漁ってスタンプカードなんか探さない。後ろに大勢待ってるんだから。私たちの後ろで海線山線のおばさま方が早くしなさいざますって目でギロギロ睨んでたの気づいてなかったんですか？
Bro, she's going off on
で
him.
もね、そういう時はレジ前に並んでる時からあらかじめ用意しておくの。あ、そうか。いいことを聞いたよ。ちなみにここでのことだけじゃないですからね。バスに乗る時もそう。サトシ君、バスを降りようとして料金を入れる時、その時になって初めてお財布を開けて小銭をちまちまと探して後ろの人を詰まらせて待たせてるでしょ。
I'd bet you're right.
みんな僕を追い抜いて勝手に料金を入れてるかな。はあ、それはね、すっごーく周りに迷惑をかけているのです。そういうのはあらかじめ用意しておくのがマナー。
Bro, she is cooking him.
わかりました？
My God.
わかったよ。今日のミオンは怖いな。
Satoshi-kun smiled as if patronizing me. I couldn't believe it. He was definitely the type who made women want to protect him. Sure, he was fine as he was when he had a busybody like me around him, but I couldn't stop worrying whether he was able to function in society without somebody like that nearby. We got plastic bags and sorted out what we bought. Satoshi-kun put a pack of tofu at the bottom of the bag. I slapped his hand and put in a milk carton
は
instead.
い、これで OK。 これで台所で買い物袋を広げてお母さんに仰天されなくて済みますからね。
No, she still will.
ありがとう。助かったよ。僕はどうも買い物が苦手でさ。買い物だけ？正直におっしゃい。
Yes, she's being so vile.
嘘嘘、冗談。
I'd realized a few things while I was spending time with him today. He's not just bad at shopping, he's also chronically clumsy. In general, you could call him a slow thinker. That meant, when he stepped into the quarrel with the punks, he must have needed a lot of courage. He might be a simpleton, but he's not stupid. He's aware of his weakness, so he must have been aware of the danger in that situation. He could have chosen to walk away even though I was in trouble, but he chose to be a man and stepped in. That was really admirable of him.
偉い偉い。
Did you just good boy him?
サトシ君は頑張ったよ。
Good boy is insane.
いい子いい子。なんだよ。急に人の頭を
I had a feeling that's what was happening.
サトシ君が一人でお買い物ができましたでしょう。
Dude. Oh my god. Shion, like, her rankings are going up, like, astronomically.
なでなでなで。ミオン、 僕のことすっごいバカにしてるだろ。
してないよ。お家一人で帰れるかな？道わかる？
やっぱりバカにしてる。
Satoshi-kun's sulky face flushed red. He's just too cute. At that point, I caught a glimpse of a billboard from the corner of my eye. Piano lessons, call XX. Abacus class, junior baseball team, members wanted. It was a posting for the team Satoshi-kun belonged to. It showed the day, time, and place for their next practice. By then, I knew just how flaky he was. I figured he must be just the same when he was playing baseball. Satoshi-kun realized that I was reading the posting. He looked uncomfortable and walked away.
今、サトシ君は思った。頼むからミオン。野球やってるとこまで来ないでくれよ。図星？そのムーってのはつまり何さ？図星ってことでしょ。
I was just gonna keep mumbling. Satoshi-kun became quiet after mumbling something. It seemed like he couldn't say anything back since I had been right on the money. Satoshi-kun, you're just too cute. I don't think going silent is a good way to dodge the issue. Well, that might have just been the way innocent people like him would react in a situation like that.
じゃあね、サトシ君。暗くなりかけてるから気をつけて帰ってね。
ミオンは一緒に帰らないのかい？ひなみ沢。
私はもうちょっと寄るとこありますんで、気にしないで先に帰ってください。
僕の買い物を手伝ってもらったんだから、今度は僕が手伝う。
No. You gotta cut it out.
大丈夫。っていうか、サトシ君が何を手伝うおつもりで？
Ooh, that's a low blow.
人の手伝いする前に、自分が手伝われなくて買い物できるようになっといてくださいな。
That's a low blow.
今日のミオンはひときわ意地悪かな。
He seemed to have some pride, at least. He looked a bit upset because he was teased by a girl. But in contrast, I felt very satisfied. As a result, I forgot to keep my guard up.
でも手伝ってくれてありがとうね。本当に助かったから。
What? That sound effect is crazy. Did you just say Q? What? Oh my god. While wearing a bright smile, Satoshi-kun suddenly started stroking my head again. I know he's teasing me, but... Oh, I can't reject him. He keeps doing it only because he's realized I won't resist. Ooh. What? You think...
じゃあね、ミオン。
What if he does this to, like, Mion, like, in normal school, right? And Mion's like, what in the world are you doing? I wonder if that's actually how he would come to find out that they're not the same person. I could actually see it.
暗くならないうちに用事を済ませてね。また明日、学校で。
また明日、学校でね。
In fact, I wouldn't see him tomorrow at all. It felt awkward, but I had to settle for that. I had to thank Sis for letting me use her name. After I separated from him, I found myself giddy and wishing to see him again as soon as possible. I wanted to know more about him. I couldn't wait for my next chance to see him. Actually, maybe there was something I could do. Just like when I obtained my freedom from St. Lucia's, I could choose how to live my life. Whatever, it wasn't that complicated. I just wanted to tease him more. I wanted him to stroke my head more. And, whatever. I already knew the schedule for his baseball team. So she's gonna get involved in the baseball team as the manager eventually, which we know is, like, will happen. So we might get to see Irie. Interesting stuff. This was a fun chapter. It's fun, but then you know how it's gonna tragically end, and it's like, man, this is terrible. Let's go ahead and read a crumbled diary. My aunt finally stopped her hysterical screaming. Today was just like any other day. I can't remember what set her off. Whatever it was, she changed subjects constantly anyway. It didn't matter. She went on past midnight again. The urge to sleep was pounding the back of my head. Once Satoko had been able to relax, she fell down on the spot and started sleeping, still clinging to my sleeve. I carried Satoko to the bedroom and laid out our futons.
ほら、サトコ。布団が敷けたよ。布団に入りな。
Satoko crawled in like a worm. She stopped moving when she was inside. I wished I could go to bed too, but I couldn't. My aunt asked me to do some chores. I had to get toothpaste after school tomorrow. I had to write it down somewhere. I had to make rice for lunch tomorrow. I set the timer. Right, I also had to repile the towels in the bathroom. That was the reason for today's scolding. My aunt will get mad if everything isn't done the way she wants. Oh, and there was something else. I was working at the grocery store the next day. They wanted me to bring an apron. Do we even have an apron in this house? I'd never seen one. My aunt will be sleeping when I go to school, so I won't have time to ask her. What should I do? Since Mion helped me get that job, I don't want to screw it up. In that case, why don't I ask Mion about it at school? She might lend me one. Is there anything else? I was envious of Satoko because she got to go to bed. It was pathetic that I felt that way. Dude, it's really not pathetic at all. I feel so bad for Satoshi, man. This is, like, so undeserved. This is so undeserved. Nah, that song's a banger. I'm actually going back into tips just so we can hear that. Okay, so this chapter was, in theory, I mean, it's pretty simple, but there's a very, very important thing that happened in this chapter, and that was the meeting of Satoshi and Shion, who, as we already know, Shion at least very clearly cares for Satoshi. And so their kind of relationship is starting a little bit, not like a romantic relationship. I don't know if they ever got to that point, to be completely honest with you. Maybe Irie kind of teased him about, like, he's got a girlfriend waiting at home, and I think, like, Shion's response was like, who? Like, who is it? Right? So honestly, I don't think they ever actually, I don't think it ever gets like that, which is actually kind of sad. Given that we know that Satoshi disappears, is presumably dead, right? Goodness. But yeah, like I said, the chapter as a whole, it's all about them meeting. Shion has clearly fallen for him. She's trying to find ways to meet him more often, and I imagine that's going to be what drives this chapter for a little bit. But I think really right now, this, like, to me, this feels like it's Satoshi's chapter so far, and not Shion's. If that makes sense, or like that it will be. Yes, Shion is the narrator, but it's just like in the way that chapter 1, in a lot of ways, is Rena's chapter, right? Keiichi's the narrator, but it's not necessarily his chapter, right? He's very important in it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Shion won't be important, but you know, again, chapter 2 is, well, actually, low-key, I thought it was Shion's chapter, but it might be Mion's chapter. One of the Sonozaki twins. It's their chapter, right? Rather than Keiichi's, right? In chapter 3, it's like, I mean, for a while, it's Satoko's chapter. And then it does kind of become Keiichi's chapter, to be honest, towards the end. Like, obviously, Satoko is still important, but, point is, I think Satoshi, Shion are going to be the two major players in this route. I think Satoshi's going to significantly drive the plot, especially later on, obviously. Like I said, I really think we're going to see that murder. And so it's just so hard for me to see, like, right now who he is, and see them, like, Shion relatively happy being around him, and I don't know, Satoshi seems to enjoy it. And knowing how this is going to end, like, even within this very chapter, it's hard. And these tips are not any better, to be clear, right? The tip is literally just, hey, Satoshi got abused at home. His aunt is abusive. And then they're like, next tip is, hey, his aunt is abusive. And I'm like, I know! Did I need to see this again? Like, it's hard to read that stuff, man. Right? And I get the point, right? And it's probably going to, like, gradually kind of show Satoshi's perspective and maybe how it shifts. But right now, all we're seeing is just, like, he's, like, in a lot of ways miserable. He feels bad that he's, like, envious of Satoko for being able to sleep past midnight, right? As, you know, a grade schooler, right? so far, like, it feels like we get to know Satoshi a little better because of those tips, but the details are kind of minor in them at the same time, if that makes sense. Yeah, this was a good chapter. We're definitely gonna do another one today. I'm gonna take a brief break, and then we will get back to this. All right, break done. On to chapter 4.
こんにちは。今日もお暑いのにご精が出ますことで。
お、ミオンさんじゃないですか。こんにちは。あれ？それは差し入れですか？
Is this actually Mion?
ありがたいな。さすがは我がチームのマネージャー。
まあ気が向いたからです。別に監督に差し入れたくて買ってきたわけじゃないので、あとさりげなく人を勝手にマネージャーに組み込まないように。
ミオンがマネージャーだったらいろいろ心強いと思うけどね。
Given that Irie officially acknowledges Shion as the manager in one of their conversations, I have to assume that it does become explicitly known the difference between Shion and Mion.
やってよ、ミオン。マネージャー。
Because I'm pretty confident now this is Shion. Satoshi-kun smiled at me in a carefree manner. I didn't want to become their manager. It'd be tiresome. I'm coming every week though, so I'm a quasi-manager already.
まあ本当に気が向いたらその時はやりますんで。で、どうです？
Oh, wait. Oh, it always said Shion. I thought it said Mion. I thought they were doing a little bit of trolling. Whoops.
サトシ君の打率はどんな感じです？
ええ、頑張ってますよ。彼の打率ですか？セブンスマートでおせんべいの袋をどれでも3つ買うとですね。
それってつまり3割ってことですか？へえ、サトシ君って結構な高打率打者じゃないの。
I can't remember what a reasonable batting percentage is. I don't pay much attention to baseball.
打率は数字じゃないよ、ミオン。ここ一番で打てなきゃ意味はないんだからさ。
True.
サトシ君は自分で自分の弱点をよく分かっているようですね。
You gotta get that clutch gene, buddy.
そこまで分かっているなら、あとは練習あるのみですよ。
Irie signaled to the pitcher, who then threw the ball. Satoshi-kun looked calm, following the ball with his eyes, then he swung. The whack! The ball flew between the first and second bases and landed in the distance.
おお、やったー！パチパチパチパチパチ！
I clapped, and Satoshi-kun blushed in response. He repositioned his helmet to hide his face.
フリーバッティングや試合が平坦な時はかなり落ち着いたいいバッティングを見せてくれるんですけどね。
You could say bro needs to develop a killer instinct. I'm so funny. Irie smiled compassionately. It seemed that Satoshi-kun really couldn't perform well when it counted. While he was usually good, when everybody expected him to perform, he couldn't. I didn't think it was because of nervousness. He just couldn't do it. I think it's a perfect fit for Satoshi-kun's character. He seems calm at first glance, but he's actually slow.
スコアボードとかそういう数字上ではかなりの高アベレージヒッターなのにね。本番に弱いってのは致命的かも。そんなことだからこないだの浮田ジャガーとの試合でもここ一番で凡退するんですよ。
Dang, getting a little harsh here.
うるさいな。気にしてるんだから黙っててくれよ。
あそこで打てればかなり美味しい見せ場だったんですけどね。残念です。
Dang, why are we laying it on him, bro? Just make him feel bad, why don't you? A hit could have put the offense into the lead, or at least given them an extension. That was when Satoshi-kun came up to bat. Irie wanted him to live up to everybody's expectations, but statistically, that wasn't likely to happen. Yet Irie insisted on giving him a chance, in spite of the fact that all the team members had suggested a pinch hitter.
あーもうあそこで打てれば完璧なのにな。どうしてダメなんですか？どうしてああいう時に打てないんですか？
just ask why. I'm sure he's just gonna be like, oh my god. I know now.
仕方ないよ。僕がああいう時弱いの本当だし。 僕だって代打を出してくれた方が試合に勝てるかなって思ったし。
試合に勝つかじゃなくてサトシ君が勝つかどうかが問題なんです。ああ、もうなんで当の本人にここまで闘争心がないのかな。
Oh yeah, he'll get aggressive. Don't you worry.
普通は逆でしょ。代打に変えられそうなところをここは俺に打たせてくださいって食ってかかるとこでしょ。自分から代打を出してほしいなんて言い出すなんて、ああもうなんでここまで闘争心がないのかな。
Dang.
それは私も普段から言ってるんですけど
I
ね。
mean, you might not be wrong, but that's vicious.
まあその辺がサトシ君のいいところではあるんですがね。
普段は紳士でも試合には鬼になる。男にはそういう二面性があっても私はいいと思います。とにかくサトシ君には鬼がない。
Russ said you need to be a sweat.
仮にもひなみ沢の人間なんだから、たまにはご先祖の鬼の血を思い出してくださいよねって聞いてますサトシ君。
聞いてるよ。よくわかんないけど。
わかんないけどってサトシ君の話をしてるんですよ。
That sprite is so funny to me. I don't know why. It's so goofy. Just the eyes.
それを
Yo, you just walk up and shut her up real quick. Satoshi-kun suddenly started stroking my head. He looked delighted for some reason. A blush immediately spread across my face. I didn't know how to respond.
ミオンは僕のためを思って言ってくれてるんだよね。
Yuria is watching this like, interesting.
ありがとう。僕は頑張る。
サトシ君、そういうことしてごまかさないでください。
ごまかしてなんかないよ。嬉しいだけだよ。
I couldn't resist his hand. I couldn't help mumbling like he does. Satoshi-kun ran back to the field, leaving me red as a beet. You're gonna hear it from
頭撫でら
Yuria.
れるの弱いんですか？
Yuria, don't even think about it.
撫でる人によります。監督が撫でてきたら関節決めますんで、覚悟の方よろしくです。
もうずるいな。
Bro really tried it.
じゃあ全員集合。今日は出席もいいことですから人数を分けて紅白戦をやってみましょう。
The Hinamizawa fighters are sort of a lazy team. The members gather simply to enjoy playing baseball, not to fight for victory. The Okonomiya Titans use this field too, but they practice on a different day of the week. They always train hard using dumbbells and stuff. Our team split into two groups and started a match, retaining their loose atmosphere.
じゃあ私は記録でもやるかな。監督、どっかに鉛筆ないですか？
いつもすみませんね。はいこれお願いしますね。
I took the pencil and the clipboard. I didn't know how to differentiate between recording hits and errors at first, but by now I was used to it.
頑張ってサトシ君。あんまり応援するとまた打てなくなっちゃいますね。
Not making it, not exactly hiding who her favorite is.
ほ
I
どほ
see.
どに頑張れ。
Just do okay then.
それはそれでひどいな。
Yo.
頑張れ。
Time passed slowly that Sunday. Huge white clouds appeared in the sky. They made me feel healthy. Humans are born to be active under the sun. One of the parents was acting as umpire today, so Irie sat on the bench with me. He shouted words of encouragement to the kids while they ran to their positions. Any other baseball coach would constantly berate them, but he was much more generous, like a kindergarten teacher. He let the kids have fun while watching over them. To other baseball players, it might look a little naive.
それでもあの程度の練習量でみんなこれだけの動きができるんだから驚きですよね。
I mean, you can't help but see Irie like this and really want to believe that he's like a good guy, and that his role as the director isn't like uber evil, you know?
南沢の子はみんな普段から元気に遊び回ってますからね。運動量は町の子とは比べ物にならないんですよ。変なフォームで固めてしまうより遊び感覚の方が伸びるんです。
That is true.
おお、見事に沖宮タイタンズとは正反対の考え方ですね。あちらの監督と対立するのわかる気がします。
タイタンズさんの考えも、試合は勝つためにするものですからね。勝利至上主義は決して間違いじゃないです。みんなで団結して共通の目標を目指すのはとても素敵なことだと思いますからね。まあうちはその目標が たまたま勝利じゃないってだけのことです。
It just sure would be a nice side effect. The Hinamizawa fighters and the Okonomiya Titans had been rivals for a long time. Both teams shared the same baseball field, for one thing. And originally there was only one team, but the people living in Hinamizawa left and made their own. Anyhow, we were rivals. The Okonomiya Titans were strictly about winning, and the Hinamizawa fighters were just about having fun. Surprisingly, our scores weren't that different, which meant our team had something they didn't. Even though I couldn't put it into words, I knew what made that happen. Unity.
ほら赤組さんも頑張ってください。2点差なんかひっくり返せちゃいますよ。白組も油断なくしっかり。
Still, some parents would criticize our coach for being too lenient, but still others would strongly agree with him. Which side would I take? The latter? I couldn't really say for sure. The reason for this was that Irie had an obnoxious habit of sexual harassment. In particular, he had a fascination with maids, but I should talk about that some other time. Just letting him have it. Satoshi-kun let the ball pass twice to see its trajectory, then hit it on the third pitch and ran to first base.
お、サトシ君打った打った。落ち着いてればさすがですよね。
最初はちょっと素振りしただけですぐバテてたんですけどね。
Built up the stamina a bit, I guess.
それを思えば本当に上達したものです。
サトシ君って文系って感じの人ですよね。よくその彼が野球をやろうなんて思ったものですね。
All the other kids who joined the baseball team loved baseball. They'd go out to play in the fields outside of practice. That's why they all had an aptitude for it. But Sis never said that Satoshi-kun exercises intensively in school or anywhere else. He only likes to read. That's why I didn't understand why he started playing for this team to begin with.
それはですね、私がサトシ君をこのチームに誘ったからなんです。
We needed time away from home. Also, did we even say that out loud?
へえ、監督が自らスカウトしたんですか？サトシ君に何かすごい素質があるのを見抜いて？
No, like I said, he just probably noticed. Oh, no, she actually did say this out loud. Okay. But, yeah, I mean, he probably just noticed he needed to be away from home.
あ、すみません。麦茶を一杯もらってもいいですか？
That's why he's dodging the question.
あ、どうも。
Yuri asked for tea in a suspicious manner. While he constantly joked around, I knew he was actually a very mature person. I assumed he was trying to evade my question.
何か訳ありなんですか？
Yuri pretended he didn't hear me, but I pressed him on it. In response, he shrugged and began answering the question.
園崎さんなら、あるいは想像がつくんじゃないかと。
Dang. What would be Mion Sonozaki's guess? I quickly searched through the data I had on Satoshi-kun. I came up with Satoshi-kun's family circumstances. Yeah. He lost his parents in an accident a year ago. Since then, he's been having a tough time at his uncle's home.
じゃあ監督はサトシ君の鬱憤とかそういうのを解消させてあげようと思って
See, I mean,
このチーム
like I
に。
said, you see stuff like this, and you really want to believe in Irie.
スポーツはいいですよ。程よく体を動かして汗をかくことはストレスの発散になります。また熱中することによってわずかな間でも家庭のことを忘れられるならそれは十分な気分転換になりますしね。
ほらサトシ君ってぼんやりしてるというかのほほんとしてるというかそういうところあるじゃないですか。やっぱり相当ストレスあるんですか？
I knew Satoshi-kun must be suffering even though he didn't look like it. But Mion Sonozaki never pays attention to things like that, and I had to act like she does.
おじさんに引き取られて少ししてからサトシ君がだいぶ体調を崩しましてね。
I'm gonna assume that's not the suspicious kind of sickness.
いろんな症状を訴えるんですが、いくら調べても原因がはっきりしないんですよ。
Maybe it is, actually. Satoshi-kun often got sick after he was taken into his uncle's custody. He suffered from fatigue and migraines. Oh, no, they just mean the abusive kind of sick. He suffered from a lack of energy and sleeplessness. The coach, Dr. Irie, soon realized Satoshi-kun was suffering from a psychological disorder. Most of the people in Hinamizawa knew how bad Satoshi-kun's environment was. It was natural for him to become sick because he entered that bad environment right after his parents' deaths.
サトシ君は感情の爆発ができないタイプなんですよ。泣いたりとか怒ったりとか、そういう感情が人一倍苦手なんです。
True.
確かにサトシ君が泣いたりとか怒ったりってのはあまり想像つかないですね。
That's why he resorted to murder. Not that I blame him. I don't blame him at all.
サトシ君のお母さんが再婚を重ねてるのはご存知で？
まあ少しは。
Satoshi-kun's mother had married a number of men over the years. That meant Satoshi-kun had several stepfathers. He had to deal with strangers coming into his home multiple times, so he was forced to be mature.
サトシ君は精神的に早熟なんです。本人は自覚していないでしょうがね。泣いたり笑ったりダダをこねたり、そういう時代をあっという間に卒業させられて大人になっちゃったんです。
監督の言い方だと大人ってのが
子供は子供らしく過ごすことで成長していくようにできているんです。それを無理に大人にしたらやっぱりいいことはないですよ。
Dang, we're getting deep. Not only was Satoko's current relationship with her aunt conspicuously terrible, I heard that her relationships with her previous stepfathers weren't good either. Satoko always caused problems, and Satoshi-kun would always step in to protect her.
だからサトシ君の体に変調が出たのはそういうことに体が耐えかねた SOS じゃないかって思ったんです。
Not what you think now. That's why Irie invited Satoshi-kun onto the baseball team. He told Satoshi that he needed a new member, or something like that.
初めは渋ってましたけどね。彼と診療の際にいろいろとお話しするうちに少しずつ打ち解けていきましてね。ちょっと見学だけにでも来てみるといい。ちょっとバットを持ってみるといい。なんて感じで少しずつ誘っていったんですよ。
Sports worked excellently for Satoshi-kun. His health quickly improved, and he started to become interested in baseball. He practiced batting. He was soon able to swing beautifully, and he learned how to see the trajectory of the ball.
なんかわかるな。サトシ君ってコツコツタイプですからね。How to Baseball なんて本をしおり挟みながら読んでる風景が想像できます。
Bro's using math to calculate the trajectory of the ball.
それであれよあれよという間に3割打者なんです。本当によく頑張りました。これでピンチの時にも打てれば完璧なんですけどね。
Bro does not have the clutch gene yet.
サトシ君と監督って仲いいんですか？
悪くはないと思ってますよ。悩みとかそういうのを打ち明けてくれたということは私を信頼してくれたからだと思ってます。
Decent enough sign. I felt a bit jealous of how confidently Irie said that. While Satoshi-kun and I were friends, we weren't so close that we'd open up to each other like that.
あれ？嫉妬してます？
Exposed. You got read like a book.
何に？
Taken aback, I blushed. Irie started laughing at me.
園崎さんもサトシ君の相談相手になってあげてください。
まあ慣れるなら慣れたらいいかななんて。
She's really not good at disguising when it comes to stuff like this. I didn't know what I was saying.
サトシ君ですね。
Oh, that's the serious Irie face.
最近また少し体調を崩してるみたいなんです。
What's the date?
え？
Whack! The ball flew to the left. But the left fielder managed to catch it. It seemed that the relationship between Satoko and her aunt had gotten worse lately. I mean, yeah. It was obvious his sickness had something to do with that.
おばさんがかなり大人げないいじめ方をしているらしいんです。サトコちゃん、本当にかわいそうなくらいにボロボロになって。何しろ聞いた話では。
And Satoshi's doing his best to bear the brunt of it.
で、それをかばうサトシ君もボロボロになっているということですね。
I wasn't interested in Satoko, so I switched the subject back to Satoshi-kun. That's kind of brutal, but I mean, I guess we knew that you didn't care that much about Satoko, but dang. I didn't know much about Satoko. I knew that she was a big part of Satoshi-kun's life, but I'd never been interested in her until today. She must have been building up self-esteem and taking care of her unreliable brother. That was all I knew about her. But considering Satoshi-kun's personality, Even that goofiness of his might have been an act. Maybe he was trying to make her feel good about herself by letting her take care of him. If only unconsciously. When he's alone, he's surprisingly strong. I realized that only recently. So I couldn't help but think. His whole life is constantly affected by Satoko. I mean, that's pretty accurate. Satoshi-kun managed to get along with his stepfathers even though he experienced some stress. Although this exact sentence easily makes me think that the chapter 2 Sonozaki we saw was Shion. Like, I have not been in doubt of that really all that much, but it just feels like there's more evidence in this chapter that is making me really feel like the Sonozaki that's loose in chapter 2 is definitely definitely Shion. Specifically right now, we see the fact that the time that she's breaking character the most when acting as Mion is when it comes to Satoshi, as in, like, that's the only time, actually. And I think the time, like, I don't want to say she broke character in chapter 2 with this, but she was, like, losing her mind about how Satoshi didn't deserve what happened to him and everything. I don't know if you guys remember that, but she really was very upset about this. This was the day Rika died, right? Like, suddenly, like, kind of cornered Keiichi about it, right? And was saying, like, kind of blaming Satoko, saying, like, those around Satoko are just cursed, right? And I don't know, Shion saying Satoshi's whole life is constantly affected by Satoko just really reminds me of that line. Let's move on, though. Satoshi-kun managed to get along with his stepfathers even though he experienced some stress. He was even getting along with his aunt. But in order to protect Satoko, he always had to step in and suffer. I didn't really know anything about Satoko, but I had to admit, I felt hostile toward her. Yeah, okay. That hostile feeling deep down, like, I felt jealous because she was monopolizing him.
最
That's a
近
little crazy.
さとこちゃんへのおばさんのいじめがだいぶエスカレートしてるみたいです。
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the notes with that.
サトシ君の体調不良もそれに比例しているんでしょうね。
Irie heaved a sigh. As he said, Satoshi-kun had been absent a few times lately. He seemed a bit tired, too. He looked normal when around everybody else, but he looked a bit depressed when he was alone.
監督はストレスに押しつぶされそうなサトシ君を救うため野球に誘ったんですよね。
ええ、そのつもりでした。
こうして野球をやっている今、またストレスに押しつぶされそうになっているサトシ君に今度は何を誘えばいいんですか？
He's gonna try and save himself this time.
どうすればいいんでしょうね。
Irie smiled powerlessly. I couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed about that, because Satoshi-kun put his trust in him.
内緒にしてくださいよ。実はですね、チームを抜けたいってそう漏らすんですよ、最近。
どうして？
疲れるからだそうです。というのは表向き。さとこちゃんと一緒にいる時間を増やしてあげるためじゃないかと思ってます。
You're not gonna take that well, are you?
サトシ君は野球をしている間、さとこちゃんがおばさんにいじめられているかもしれない。
Is that how he's gonna get her, like, the board game club to start or something?
その時、
If it's not start, has
さ
it
とこちゃ
started
んの
already?
そばにいられないことが兄として辛いと、
Are we gonna witness the
そ
founding
う
of the club?
思っているのかもしれません。
We actually might. I was left speechless for a while. Satoko again. Satoko. Why did Satoshi-kun have to sacrifice so much for her? Just by ignoring her, his stress would melt away. Of course, I knew he couldn't do that. If that were the case, then the blame lay with his little sister. I knew how badly she'd been treated. That only happens because she made things worse for herself. Ooh. Wow. It was her fault that she couldn't establish a decent relationship with her aunt. If Satoko were more mature, like Satoshi-kun, her home life wouldn't have gotten so bad. Satoshi-kun wouldn't have to suffer those indirect blows. I don't know if I'd... Well, never mind. I was going to say, I don't know if I'd call them indirect, but I guess they kind of are. In the meantime, the baseball team's practice match had become one-sided. It wasn't even worth watching anymore. The members of the losing team were just goofing off. The sky had turned cloudy, too. It was depressing. It didn't look like it had rained soon, though. The gray sky hadn't brought along any cool air. It just felt disgusting. Irie became quiet. He was looking down around his feet. I, meanwhile, just stared at Satoshi-kun. To me, he didn't look active anymore. He was once able to enjoy playing baseball, and he felt fine. But he got sick again. just because the relationship between Satoko and her aunt had deteriorated. I couldn't help but say it.
サトシ君をどうこうするってより、サトコをどうこうする方が先決では。
It was just a murmur, but Irie had definitely caught it. What do you mean by that?
それはどういう意味ですか？
別に難しい話じゃないです。サトコがしっかりしてくれれば、サトシ君に迷惑をかけることもない。サトコがそもそもの原因であるってことが言いたいだけです。
Yeesh! Coming out and saying that. Woof.
そんなことは。
Look, you're not like completely wrong, I guess, but like, I don't know, victim blaming like a 10-year-old, kind of like, for not being strong in the face of abuse. I understand one of the things that was kind of talked about with Satoko is that she doesn't exactly do a good job at like, I don't know how to word it. Like with her like step parents and her, like, I guess presumably her not step aunt, her like aunt that is now taking care of her, right? She never did a very good job at even attempting to build a rapport, and instead just caused trouble and lashed out. Like, I get that, but still, that just doesn't justify the way things are. I can't personally blame Satoko.
でしょ？だってサトコがトラブルからサトシ君はそのトラブルに介入して矢面に立たなければならないんでしょ？でその結果、本当は買わなくて済んだおばの喧嘩まで買ってるわけでしょ？
Satoshi-kun never got scared of any trouble, no matter how formidable the enemy. He'd bravely stand up to protect the weak. I knew that because I could vividly imagine it. Whenever their aunt chid Satoko, Satoshi-kun steps in to protect her. The aunt probably didn't like it. Though Satoshi-kun didn't have to fight, the aunt would attack him anyway. The fight would then be between the aunt and him. Satoko might then tease the aunt by sticking out her tongue, hiding behind his back, and pretending to be scared. She'd never think about how deeply he was being hurt. I mean, this is all accurate, to be fair. Look, it's not that you're wrong, but like, it's also not right either, you know? Like, objectively speaking, like, yes, I guess if Satoko could just like bear the brunt of this, right? Unless the aunt is actually a lot more fair than we're led to believe, I guess. Which I'm really doubting, right? Unless she's actually a lot more fair and like... Even then, though, like... From everything we're hearing, like, the way she's reacting, it doesn't matter, like, if a kid acts like that, you know? Like, the way, like, Satoko is treated is really bad. I said, objectively speaking, well, okay, not even. If she didn't act up at all, maybe there wouldn't be any problems, right? And maybe that would help Satoshi, but I just hate that line of logic.
園崎さん、あなたがそんな言い方をする人だったとは驚きです。あなたは聡子ちゃんのお友達でしょ？お姉さん的な立場でしょ？普段も学校で聡子ちゃんを慰めたり励ましたりしてるものだと思ってました。なのにそんな言い方をするなんて。
You think she's gonna come out and like maybe reveal that she's not actually Mion?
正直驚いています。
Irie looked at me suspiciously. I could tell what he was thinking about me. I'd said too much. Mion Sonozaki and Satoko Hojou are friends. They're close, so Mion should have been encouraging her after the situation at home got tougher. That's what Mion was supposed to do. I had totally forgotten about that and spoken as myself. It's only natural that Irie would give me a suspicious look. He might end up changing his impression of Mion Sonozaki entirely. I'd have to apologize to her about this and ask her to put things right. I totally messed up. Even so, I didn't think I'd said anything wrong. I'd objectively looked at the situation and made a modest proposal. To be honest, I was simply afraid that he might leave the team. I couldn't go to the school in Hinamizawa, so the baseball field was the only place where I could see him. I could even say that he was my reason for living. Yeesh. Yeah, I mean, I get it, but that's when thoughts start to get dangerous. We're at the point where my only reason for living. I mean, it explains why, from what we've seen, Shion is very I don't know that I want to say dramatic, because that implies that it's not like justified to her. But when it comes to Satoshi, she's very strong feelings. That's right. I was in love with him. I wasn't going to tell him how I felt, or I was satisfied just being by his side. I certainly couldn't ask for anything more. After all, I couldn't reveal my true identity. I had to pretend to be Mion in order to live in Okinomiya. I thought that maybe I should leave Okinomiya in order to be free. That's stupid. No matter how tough my life might be, I'd prefer to be here, with Satoshi-kun stroking my head every now and then. Why did I love him that much? I read about it in some manga once. You don't need a reason to be in love. I was surprised at myself for being like this.
落ち着け、私。
I think Irie heard that. I breathed out slowly, then held my breath, trying to slow my throbbing heart. I felt a bit calmer. At that point, a clear thought came into my head. I want to be with Satoshi-kun. So, I want him to stay on the team. So, I want to get rid of his concerns and his stress. So what? So, what can I do to achieve all that? Are we about to get Chapter 3, Part 2? My head started to cool down as I heard the umpire shout.
ゲームセット試合終了
That was a really interesting section. Starting to maybe see some of the cracks in that identity as Mion. At least, some days I see him, some days I don't. A clear sky gets cloudy, and rain will always stop eventually. I thought his absence was just like that, but he was actually on the verge of breakdown. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, gotta see that one coming. We're already almost there. I feel like we're closer to Watanagashi than I expected. The rainy season was just around the corner, and the air had become so humid that my shirt stuck to my skin. It had been a few weeks since Satoshi-kun stopped showing up for baseball practice. I looked for him as soon as I arrived at the field. He's not here yet. Did I get here too early? I want to see him playing in the field right when I get here. I had started arriving late because of those feelings. However, he wasn't here today either. I didn't even bother hiding my disappointment anymore. Everybody knew by now how I felt. The team members from Mion's class came over to try and console me. I shooed them away.
園崎さん、気分が優れませんか?
Even Irie couldn't comfort me. I was aware that he, too, knew why I was like this.
今日帰りますね。気分じゃないです。
ほら、今日は沖宮タイタンズさんと打ち合わせをする日じゃないですか。マネージャーの園崎さんにも同席してほしかったんですがね。
私を勝手にマネージャーにしないでください。私、マネージャーだったつもりはないんですから。
Irie looked down, not knowing what to say.
わかりました。元気が回復したらまた手伝ってくださいね。
もう来ないかもです。マネージャーが必要なら、私以外を募集してください。
気が向いた時でいいです。また遊びに来てくださいね。
And he's being so welcoming still. Like I said, it's really hard for me to kind of doubt Irie at times. I guess my theories don't really paint him as that much of a villain, but like definitely not as like, you know, some figure only out for good.
それにほら、あなたがいないとサトシ君が戻ってきた時寂しがりますよ。
Yeah. I ignored him and turned around. I'd already set up my schedule with Mion, so I didn't have to ask her every time anymore. I tried to contact her a couple of times to ask how Satoshi-kun was doing in school, but I hadn't been able to get through to her. Apparently, the hag had sensed that I might be in contact with Sis. In other words, Sis was being watched. As a result, it hadn't been easy to contact her. Kasai, who had been helping me contact her, seemed to also have been marked. People knew he was loyal to me. I hadn't seen him for a while either. All I could do was wonder how Satoshi-kun was doing. I was frustrated because there was no way for me to know. My head was filled with worries, but something surprised me out of the blue. Is he going to show up? Somebody called out to me when I was about to leave the field on my bike.
みーちゃん、こんにちは。
Hello. Now, if anyone's going to be able to tell them apart, it's going to be Rena, I think. I'd never seen this girl before. Luckily, she called me Michan. There's only one person who refers to Mion that way as far as I know.
レナか。珍しいね。レナがここに来るなんて。
Her name is Rena Ryugu. Rena Ryugu. Her real name is Rena, but she wants to be called Rena. So that's what we call her. She moved here in April. I had some information on her, but it was all ambiguous. Sis was still a bit uncertain about her since she's so new. It was hard for me to handle someone like that. I didn't know how to act around her as Mion, so I decided to pretend to be in an obvious sulky mood. That way she wouldn't talk to me as much, assuming that Mion was simply feeling bad. Well, that's how I really am anyway.
みーちゃんは帰り？
うん。気分が優れないの。
What the?
悪いね。気分が優れないの。悪いね。
I know it's just different voices. That's how it works sometimes. But holy, that voice for Rena is so different.
うん。
Like, at least the...
レナか。珍しいね。レナがここに来るなんて。
I feel like that, like...
悪いね。
That one's at least pretty close, or I can't really tell. It could even be the same, but like...
みーちゃんは帰り？
気分が優れないの。
That literally just...
悪いね。気分が優れないの。
That literally just sounds like Shion speaking. Am I crazy? Whatever, doesn't matter.
じゃあ一緒に帰ろう。
Ultimately, just... I wanted to say that I'd rather be alone, but there's only one road to Hinamizawa. So asking to be alone would look odd. The only way to not seem suspicious would be to walk home with her.
そうだね。帰ろか。
Rena quietly nodded. I unlocked my bike.
みーちゃん、傘は？
持ってないけど。
今日はこの後、天気崩れるかもしれないんだって。
Are we getting a dramatic rain scene?
傘ないなら急ごう。
As she predicted, we were attacked by pouring rain on our way. We ended up taking shelter in a small shack in front of a bus stop.
すごい降りだけど、これはそんなに長引きそうじゃないね。
そうだね。
I heard the sound of rain pattering on the rooftop and the raindrops jumping into puddles. It sounded loud, but it made me feel strangely calm. I zoned out for a moment, and Rena talked to me while looking up at the rainy sky.
最近、元気ないって聞いたから、心配してたんだよ。
All the baseball team members knew I was depressed because I hadn't seen Satoshi-kun recently. Most of them attended the school in Hinamizawa, so it wasn't surprising that she knew as well. I hadn't been able to contact Sis these past few weeks, but I was sure she had an idea of how I feel about Satoshi-kun and how I would feel if he didn't come back to his baseball practice. Sis was probably pretending to act a little depressed during her day-to-day in Hinamizawa to avoid creating a big gap between our moods. But neither of us knew the details about the other right now, so she wouldn't be able to answer if I just asked her what was wrong. She'd only be able to say, "Leave me alone." I might lead more people to become worried. Rena must have thought Mion was depressed. That must be why she came all the way to see me. She must have known what was going on, because she knew that I was at the baseball field.
サトシ君、構ってくれないから、寂しい？
Okay, so he's already at the point where he's avoiding everyone. Having deduced what had been going on with Satoshi-kun from what she just said, he'd been distancing himself from others lately because of exhaustion. That's what it sounded like, at least.
サトコちゃんの件で、だいぶ悩んでるみたいだった。サトシ君は、すごく追い詰められてると思う。かわいそうだよね。
I feel like Shion's about to snap.
サトシ君は本当に妹思いだからね。偉いよ、本当に。
What I'd said sounded hollow, as I knew too well how much of a burden Satoko had become.
でも、だからってみーちゃんまで落ち込んじゃったら、かえってサトシ君を追い詰めちゃうように思うかな。
私に追い詰めるつもりなんて。
それはもちろん知ってるよ。でも、だからこそ、学校にいる時のサトシ君を笑顔で迎えてあげられなかったら、本当にサトシ君は追い詰められちゃうよ。みーちゃんは、たとえ嘘でも笑顔が作れる強い人間だって知ってる。だから、嘘でも笑ってほしいの。最初はたとえ嘘でもね。笑顔って、最後には本物になるんだよ。
What she was saying in a nutshell was this. Both Satoshi-kun and Satoko were totally wiped out. If Mion was also depressed, even though she's the sort of person who usually lightens the mood, their situation will be stuck in a vicious cycle. Rena sounded more like she was trying to give me advice than trying to console me. She must be more mature than she looks. Sis told me that she was a funny girl with a few bad habits. She seemed to have another, very mature side to her. Yeah?
みーちゃんはサトシ君のこと好き？
Well, let's see what... I have no clue if she's willing to admit to
好
that.
き
She is. No, I shouldn't have told her that. I immediately responded.
なら笑おう。
Rena smiled
みー
herself.
ちゃんの笑顔できっとサトシ君に元気を分けてあげられると思う。みーちゃんはそれしかできないことにそれでもね、多分それが一番サトシ君の力になる。
If it did anything, it gave him resolve in the end, I
理
guess.
屈ではわかるけどね。笑えったってそう簡単にはできないよ。
Rena giggled and nodded.
野球の練習にもさ、バイトが終わったらきっと帰ってくるから。
His part-time job? I almost asked that question, but I managed to stop myself. In the tone of Rena's voice, it sounded like it was something everyone knew.
バイトか。いつ終わるんだろうね。
お金が貯まるまでだろうけど、どんなに遅くてもさとこちゃんの誕生日までには終わるよ。
How far away is that? I tried to figure out what was going on from what she said. I had to listen very carefully to uncover the whole picture. Satoshi-kun seemed to be working in order to make some money. I don't think it's easy to find a job when you're still in school. Sis might have had something to do with it. His job only seemed temporary, and it seemed to have something to do with Satoko's birthday. It wasn't that difficult to figure out. Satoshi was working and saving up to buy his little sister something expensive for her birthday. He was trying to comfort her, even though he was so torn up himself. Satoko again. Satoshi-kun was already worn out because of her, and he was now working for her sake, even though he was exhausted. How stupid. It would be easier for him to just forget about Satoko. Yeesh. Holy! I was startled when I realized Rena was looking straight into my eyes. She was smiling, but her eyes looked creepy. Yeah, that's the Rena classic, right? I never voiced what I was thinking, but she was looking at me as though she figured out that I was blaming Satoko. Dude, this is like so confusing to me. Do we have a bunch of people who are just masterful at reading faces? Or is something up with that? Because I never mentioned this explicitly. I wrote it down somewhere. And I almost tweaked because I thought I saw it again earlier. But there are so many examples of times where characters will not even vocalize something, right? Keiichi wouldn't even vocalize something, but someone else would respond to his sentence. And I just eventually assumed it was a thing with the writer, right? Where you just are meant to assume it was vocalized. But you see something like this, I never voiced what I was thinking. But she was looking at me as though she figured out that I was blaming Satoko. Again, it could just be written on her face. They make that exact, like, they played that off for jokes a few times during the game itself. So maybe that's just what it is, but it's just weird. I keep wondering if there's something more to it, but I don't know. She beamed when she noticed my fear. She smiled as she understood that I thought that way because of love. She was giving me the creeps. I could hear thunder roar in the distance. The rain began to pick up.
さとこちゃんがサトシ君を独占してることに嫉妬を感じてる？
I avoided answering immediately this time. Rena seemed to know what I was thinking already.
別にみーちゃんがそう思っても私は軽蔑しないよ。人を一途に好きになるときってそういうものだもん。
ありがとう。
でもみーちゃんは今までずっとさとこちゃんを励ましてくれてたよね。それって私すごく立派なことだと思うな。
Not the same person, but she clearly hasn't realized that yet.
さとこは仲間だもの。当然でしょ。
I sounded so fake. I felt like spitting on the floor.
私たちにはさとこちゃんもさとしくんも励ますことしかできない。どうやったらこの苦境から救ってあげられるのかわからない。
さとこがさとしくんにべったりしすぎなんだよ。さとこがもっとしっかりすればさとしくんがここまで追い詰められることはない。
You vocalized it.
はっきり言うね。
Rena nodded with an unflinching smile, even though my remarks could be taken as harsh. Well, they are. What was this mysterious girl thinking? It was difficult to get a read on her.
さとしくんもさ、 ほんの少しはそう思っているとこあるかもしれないね。
Rena kept smiling, but her smile looked strangely cold.
サトシ君も多分心のどこかでサトコちゃんをかばい続けることに疲れを感じてると思う。
And that's why he resorts to a more permanent solution. Given the type of person Rena is, I don't think she'd say something if she wasn't certain of it. Because of that, she must have been confident in what she just told me.
どうしてそう思う？
私サトシ君に打ち明けられたから。
I mean, that's a pretty good reason. Satoshi-kun secretly confessed to her. Rena asked me to keep it that way.
サトシ君がね、言った兄として頼られることに苦痛を感じる。それはとても罪深いことだと知っているけどってね。
I don't think he would say something like that. But however, it wasn't likely that Rena was lying. I just met her, so I didn't know what made me feel that way. My hunch told me she was telling the truth. I heaved a huge sigh. Satoshi-kun must have gotten so tired that he couldn't help telling someone. Even so, even if he thought that way, he wouldn't tell somebody so easily. Maybe Rena led him to do so. She might be capable of something like that. I don't understand this girl. It had only been a little while since we'd met, but I'd already started talking about something I was keeping deep inside of me. Does she have some kind of supernatural power to reach into people's minds and drag out what they're thinking? Well, that's practically what I was implying earlier. I don't know that I really buy it, but she is really good at that. It suddenly hit me that I was sitting with this creepy girl in a tiny shack. I've been dragged into her strange world. I don't think Sis had realized Rena's real personality. She thinks Rena is just a funny girl with some strange habits. She would have told me if she knew.
レナはサトシ君に打ち明けられるくらいに信頼されてるんだね。羨ましい。
別に信頼されてるわけじゃない。私が経験者だからだと思う。
経験？レナにも兄弟をかばったりした経験が？
ひたひたとずっと足音がついてきて、夜は枕元にまで立たれて見下ろされる経験。
Good God. The horror vibe of Higurashi has... This song is so much more horrifying than anything I think from the question arcs. I'm not gonna lie. Plus this CG, oh my goodness, dude. This is horrifying, and just casually mentioning those footsteps always followed me. Good God. So, Satochi's hearing the footsteps. Huh? Sorry, Rena. What are you talking about? I turned around to face her, and got the chills. Though she was smiling, her eyes looked ice cold. I trembled and froze with my eyes open.
みーちゃんにはない？ないと思う。多分。
Rena kept laughing self-derisively. I tried to figure out what she was
みー
saying.
ちゃんはひなみ沢から逃げ出そうとか、もっと都会に行きたいなとか、そういうことを考えたことはある？
I didn't know how to respond. Rena waited for my answer, urging me to speak with her silence.
ないよ。私は地元好きだし。
だよね。だよね。みーちゃんはそうだと思う。
Dude, what in the world is happening? This is really creepy. It didn't seem like a good idea to lie to her. Rena has some kind of power I can't grasp. She can read people's minds just by seeing the slightest change in their expressions. So I had to tell her the truth.
そうならば、みーちゃんは大丈夫。お社様には怒られない。
お社様？
Oh, Yashiro-sama. That's Hinamizawa's guardian deity. I couldn't understand why she mentioned that name. My mind stopped for a moment.
うん。お社様。
She calmly repeated the name as if trying to teach me something. Yeah, I remember. Oyashiro-sama never allows heathens to desecrate Hinamizawa. Oyashiro-sama never allows the villagers to leave either. Those are the rules. Slowly, I recalled the fear of the curse which supposedly caused the dismemberment murder and the death of the Hojou couple. When I was sent to the institution, I had this fear. I was scared that if I went to that faraway boarding school, I'd fall under the curse. But I should be okay. I escaped from the school and returned to my hometown, to Okonomiya, to be precise. But it should be okay according to the kids' rules, because I love Hinamizawa. The hag forces me to live this suffocating life, and I still chose to stay in this place. I don't believe I'm breaking Oyashiro-sama's rules. Even though the Sonozaki family had selfishly banished me to a remote place, I came back here anyway. Oyashiro-sama should even bless me for that. I guess I'm trying to convince myself that the curse doesn't apply to me, but I think I'm still afraid of it.
私は地元好きだから。
Yeah, because you low-key have already been inflicted with it.
その意味では、お社様のたたりがあるとは思っちゃいないね。模範的だとすら思ってるけど。
それは私も認める。だからこそ、サトシ君のことはわかんない。
どうして？
サトシ君は、心のどこかで、ひなみ沢を捨てて、どこかへ逃げ出したいと思ってるから。
Eh? I gave an inaudible cry. While I was feeling sad that Satoshi-kun hadn't shown up for practice, he still lived in Hinamizawa, so I never even considered the thought of him going away.
サトシ君が家出したがってるってこと？
無意識のうちに。お社様が枕元に立つまでは、多分意識すらしてなかったと思う。
I still had no idea what she was talking about. I continued trying to figure out what she was saying.
サトシ君が体験していることは、すべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。
Some of it definitely is. What is the date? I wish someone would say.
誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。誰かがずっとつけてくる。誰かがいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。それらは初めのうちはお外でだけだけど、やがて後ろのそれは自分の家の中にまでついてくるようになる。そしてお布団に入って明かりを消してもずっと枕元から見下ろしてるの。ただただ黙ってじっと。
Oh man. Look, I mean, I already knew that these were all symptoms, but the vibe they've created is just so horrifying. Like, this is a masterfully written scene.
自らの罪を認めるまで、サトシ君は夢見が悪いって最初言い出したの。それで私がどんな夢と聞いたら、私の時をなぞるようだった。だから私、彼に予告したの。その気配がやがて近づき、足音を聞かせるようになり、常にサトシ君を見下ろしているようになったなら、それはきっと私の時と同じだから相談してって。サトシ君ははじめ私のことを怪訝に思ったと思う。でも私が予告した通りにお社様の気配が近づくのを感じ、お社様が枕元にまで立つに至って、やっと自分の身に起こってることを相談できるのは私しかいないって気づいたの。
Rena didn't look like she was joking. She just calmly told me what had been going on. I couldn't even move. I couldn't tell if her words were a joke or the truth. I could only feel stunned.
私はね、もともとひなみ沢に住んでいたの。小学校に上がる直前で茨城に引っ越した。でも新しい環境に馴染めなくてね、心の中のお社様にひなみ沢に帰れ帰れって何度も呼びかけられてた。でも小学生の子が泣きながら元の町に帰りたいって言ったって、私は現実とお社様の声に板挟みにされてずっと過ごすことになる。
Trying to glean as much from this scene as I can. I feel like I'm just sitting here in silence.
そして
Rena paused. It looked like she didn't want to go into the details of what followed. In general, she confused me even more.
結局いろいろあって私はひなみ沢に帰ってくることができた。だから
お社様にはそれで許してもらえた。あれ以来お社様の気配を感じることはないもの。でもね、サトシ君は私と違ってひなみ沢にいながらお社様のたたりを受けることになった。それはなぜか。理由は一つ。サトシ君はひなみ沢にはいたけれども、ひなみ沢を捨てて遠くに逃げたがっていたから。その心をお社様は許さなかったんだね。サトシ君は自問自答を何度も繰り返した挙句に、ほら、サトシ君、アルバイトをしてるでしょ。サトコちゃんが欲しがったあの大きなぬいぐるみは10万円くらいするもんね。サトシ君はサトコちゃんの誕生日までにその額を稼ごうとしている。
How far away is that?
でもほら、考えてみて。それだけのお金があったら、後先を考えなくていいなら、どこか遠くへ逃げ出す十分な費用になりうるんだよ。
Right.
サトシ君は無意識のうちにね、サトコちゃんを捨ててどこか遠くへ逃げ出すお金に使ってしまいたいって思うようになってたの。それはサトシ君にとってはこの上なく罪深いこと。でもさっきみーちゃんが指摘したように、サトコちゃんの存在自体がサトシ君の負担になってるのは事実。サトシ君だってバカじゃないもん。兄として認めたくなかっただけで、サトコちゃんが負担になっていることにはちゃんと気づいていた。
This is a really long scene and it's crazy.
だからサトシ君は葛藤してるんだよ。
These Rena rants are always just insane.
自分は妹を喜ばせるためのお金を貯めるためにバイトをしているつもり。
I mean, the bear was gone though. So I don't know.
だけれども、それは自分の心を騙しているだけで、本当は自分が逃げ出すためのお金を作るためにバイトしてるんじゃないかって。私は逃げ出すべきじゃないと思う。逃げ出したってサトシ君は多分一生後悔する。
Now that is probably true.
お社様だってそれを分かってるからサトシ君にこうして警告してくれているの。サトシ君の心にサトコちゃんを見捨てるなんて悪魔のささやきが早く聞こえなくなるといいんだけども。サトシ君は綿流しの数日後だっけのサトコちゃんの誕生日にプレゼントを間に合わせるため、今いろいろなアルバイトに精を出してる。
Right.
心も体も追い詰めてる。そんな苦境がきっとサトコちゃんの誕生日を境に終わるんだって信じて。
Well, he's right. He's right.
サトシ君は今もお社様のたたりに苛まれている。サトコちゃんを守るか見捨てるかの天秤の狭間に立たされながらね。
The torrential rain didn't seem to want to stop. It kept pouring down on the galvanized iron roof, producing a loud noise. Yet in the shack, it felt completely silent. What the hell was Rena talking about? I couldn't even grasp half of what she was saying. The only thing I had figured out is that Satoshi-kun was struggling, confused, and in lots of pain. He's suffering from Yashiro-sama's curse? And Rena had experienced that before? The Watanagashi festival was right around the corner. Yeah, how right around the corner? I need to know. Because I just gotta say, right now, my 3 to 6 days theory is looking, cooked. Right? Which, look, maybe actually isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, to be completely honest. The whole 3 days, like, you get ill, and over the course of 3 days, your symptoms get gradually worse. But if he's already hearing footsteps, and he's already, like, feeling a presence, like, Watanagashi would have to be, like, tomorrow. And Satoko's birthday, like, the next day for that timeline to really add up, you know? So, I don't... That theory might be completely cooked, to be honest. But, like I said, it's maybe not super important that it's specifically 3 days. Maybe there's reason to believe that some people can endure longer. I don't know. One thing I do want to say before we go on, Rena obviously talks a lot about Yashiro-sama's curse. Wow, we conveniently right now have the... okay, it just wasn't letting me grab the bar. We have the entire conversation in here. Look at all that orange. And how little green there is. Holy Rena yap. But, so, we know a lot of this, or generally have an idea, but the thing is, I don't think Rena's understanding of this is completely correct, right? And that's one thing that you really have to keep in mind, right? When you hear stuff like this, her specifically is saying things like, I mean, this is true. Everything he's going through is a sign of the curse. Sitting right by your side, waiting silently for you to admit to your sin. What else was I really looking at? Yeah, the voice telling her to return to Himizawa, which, like, maybe it did, but, like, I don't know. I do wonder if there's more to that than I think, or if that's Rena's interpretation of the curse and why it's happening, right? And it's just not necessarily accurate, right? Is Satoshi's being subjected even though he's here, and it's because he apparently wishes to abandon Himizawa. Look, that could be the reason. It could legitimately be the reason, but Rena's believed this the whole time, to be clear. Like, even in other chapters, this is her belief. Right? And so the fact that she believes it in this chapter isn't exactly some perfect indicator that, like, this is completely true. Rena doesn't have to be correct, but obviously her description of the symptoms is basically exactly what we've heard from her before and is more or less exactly how I viewed it, you know, the footsteps, the feeling presences, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, like I said, the 3 days part of my theory might be a little cooked. Maybe I looked a little too hard there. But I still feel like the general idea of it might not be wrong. You know, as a physical illness. But let's go ahead and continue. Maybe they'll reveal something with the timeline. That means it would line up. I don't know, but I just don't think it's likely. But Yashiro-sama's curse had struck 3 years in a row. There was no guarantee that it wouldn't strike a 4th time. Satoshi-kun was subject to Yashiro-sama's curse, even now? Was he going to skip town? Was he going to be the next victim of Yashiro-sama's curse? Either way, it might disappear forever. Could I do something to prevent it? If I didn't do anything, it would all come to a hopeless end. End? I started feeling a sense of dread. I didn't buy the crazy story Rena told me, but if something really was happening to Satoshi-kun, which might bring about some kind of an end, I couldn't help feeling scared. It's true, isn't it? My instinct is always correct. I decided to contact Mion despite the danger. One thing I do want to point out is my 3-day theory might have actually been cooked the exact moment that Mion in the very beginning of this chapter was hearing footsteps that weren't there, which is like a really bad sign. This might be something that, I don't know, you can kind of use your willpower to fight. Maybe 3 days is just kind of like the normal expected length if you can't really fight. I don't know. Maybe 3 days is completely wrong, because, like I said, to me it seems like Shion might already have like, you know, whatever the curse is, based on that alone. Satoshi is probably longer than 3 days here. Like I said, you could argue that it's extended to 6 at times, which would buy time, but like I said, it didn't seem like people were really experiencing symptoms until the 3-day mark, right? And then you have 3 more. I don't know. I'd have to look back at it. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I assumed that. And it just isn't true. Maybe you experienced the symptoms, like, for the whole time, right? That I was kind of thinking people had it, like, all 6 days. I thought Keiichi only heard the footsteps at the 3-day mark, right? But, I don't know, was he feeling a presence watching him in the days prior? Maybe, and I just kind of didn't really think about it. Alright, let's move on for now. I can work this out later. I decided to contact Mion despite the danger. Mion got upset at first, but she had to listen to me.
おねえ、サトシ君のことだけど、どういうことになってるの？最近、だいぶ険しい様子なんだよ。うかつに声もかけられない雰囲気。何それ？声をかけられないから、サトシ君がどういう状況になってるかよく分かってないってこと？ごめん。おねえ、キンキンにまた入れ替わる機会を設けてほしいの。うん。それはもちろん構わないよ。でも最近はちょっと綿流しのお祭りの打ち合わせの絡みで似て何？またバイト？私、ひなみ沢の学校へ行く。
Bold move. She's gonna try to talk to Satoshi directly. I was literally like 3 lines away from the end. I guess I should have just kept going and done all my talking here, but whatever. Let's go ahead and view the tips, and then we'll maybe talk about things more. This is notebook page 21. Why don't I relate my encounter with that creepy girl in the rain? Her name is Rena Ryugu. Her real first name is Reina. I have no idea what kind of girl she really is. One thing is certain. She has no relation to the Sonozaki family. She has no relation to the 3 families as a whole, either. The Ryugu family used to live in Hinamizawa, and then they moved to Ibaraki. That was before she went to elementary school. They returned to Hinamizawa some years later. Rena Ryugu said she came back because Oyashiro-sama told her to. I don't know what that means. She said it was the curse of Oyashiro-sama, that Oyashiro-sama had stalked her. I think that was probably a hallucination, but Satoshi-kun had been interested in that experience. She said that Satoshi-kun was also experiencing Oyashiro-sama's curse. Satoshi-kun told her that he was being followed by some unknown existence. He was surprised to learn that Rena had the same experience before. What is Oyashiro-sama's curse? Why did Rena and Satoshi-kun have a similar experience? I believe that means somebody put them under surveillance. Somebody must be spying on the next victim of the curse. Since Rena and Satoshi-kun both blindly believed in Oyashiro-sama's curse, they interpreted it as Oyashiro-sama's presence. If paranoia kicked in, they'd feel as if they were experiencing paranormal phenomena. Judging from what Rena said, it seemed that Satoshi-kun had been put on surveillance since long before Watanagashi. So, one question comes to mind. Why were they watching Rena? I'm assuming that the surveillance was placed on a victim to be of that year. If so, I don't understand why Rena went through it. Why did they watch her, even though she was living so far away? If she was considered somebody who abandoned the village, I could understand, but she didn't fall victim in the end. Maybe she was forgiven because she came back to Hinamizawa. I guess she still knows something I don't. Interesting. I wish I could scroll up and see the text from here. So, do we believe this idea that that sense of feeling someone's presence was it's like somebody spying on the next victim of the curse? Again, a lot of these things are what certain characters believe to be true. We've already seen what Rena and Satoshi believe to be true, and then this is what Shion believes to be true. Is that it's somebody spying on the next victim of the curse. That's what they're feeling. I don't know. I don't know that I fully believe it, because like we saw with Keiichi, right? If you saw Keiichi in chapter 1, there's actually just no way that this is actually true, right? That it's literally just them being like kind of stalked, right? I guess at that point it could just become paranoia, like you feel like you're being watched because you are, and so it gradually gets worse. I don't know if I fully believe that, right? I still think there's, like I said, I still kind of believe my illness and sickness theory. Maybe my timeline is a little off, right? I don't... Especially because this right here, I don't understand why Rena went through it. Why did they watch her even though she was living so far away? Like, why would that be the case, right? Like, in all fairness, I don't know how much my theory explains this either. Well, actually, no, it kind of does, though, right? If, like I said, the idea is that it's kind of like a thing that's within you that doesn't really start to show until you have a break, right? And then it starts to get really bad. It would make sense that Rena went through it because she was already kind of not adjusting well, and I think eventually kind of that maybe that got to her, including her like fear of Oyashiro-sama that she had always had, right? And so I don't know, like maybe it just got to her and she kind of broke because of that, right? I mean, Satoshi, I mean, with everything he's going through within his house, like protecting Satoko, yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he broke right now, right? Like, I feel like my theory can still explain all of this, right? And honestly, I don't know that Shion's does, right? Like, if, say this is a individual just, like, stalking people to make them the curse victim, literally, why would they be like, Rena, I guess? Let's go for Rena, right? Rena Ryugu, who left before the curse killings even started happening, it sounds like, right? Let's go all the way out into wherever she lived, right? Like some prefecture that was not here, right? And just like stalk her, right? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. And she didn't fall victim in the end, like Shion pointed out, and so it makes even less sense, right? Like I said, I think that the syringe is a cure. I'm gonna guess Rena got cured. I don't know. You also got to wonder, like I've mentioned before, like my whole idea right now is that it's like a parasite is what causes the illness. When someone's like really susceptible, really emotionally vulnerable, they kind of, I'm guessing, like kind of take over, not like literally take over, but a little bit, I guess. That's when they kind of are like trying to start maybe whispering things to them, making them feel fear. Maybe they somehow gain from this, right? And obviously that bit's a reach, but like at times, but it could explain. I was gonna say, maybe, I don't know, maybe if they literally do like something about them is better in Hinamizawa, I don't know, but it could just be like preying on their fears type thing. I really don't know. I don't know. Now I'm becoming like less confident in my theory in ways, but like at the same time, I don't know that I really believe it's just them like being stalked, basically. So I still am with my theory. Even if details are probably wrong. Certain details. Let's go on to notebook page 24. Satoshi-kun looked terrible. When he went home, he had to mediate a fight between Satoko and their aunt. He became mentally exhausted. He went to work every day. He became physically exhausted. He no longer communicated with his classmates. He's either slept on his desk or was gone somewhere during lunch break. He used to be really gentle. It was painful to see him suffering like that. On top of all that, he was dealing with the curse of Oyashiro-sama. He must have been completely, totally, and absolutely exhausted. That curse was a form of surveillance by those planning to victimize Satoshi-kun that year. That means that the other victim was in the same situation. Satoshi-kun's aunt had also been watched. Did she notice any presence? What about the others? Did the victims of the previous incidents also experience it? I need to investigate the facts in order to prove the curse on Satoshi-kun was actually just surveillance. Is it surveillance, paranoia, or really the curse? Look, when you point out that in this scenario, presumably, Satoko's aunt, who, I don't know if she has a name that we know, but it would be kind of convenient so I could stop saying Satoko's aunt and Satoshi's aunt. I don't know. maybe it could explain why things are getting so much worse right now if she's paranoid, but I don't think that's the super likely explanation, honestly. I don't know. Like I said, I don't really buy Shion's theory, to be honest. That's assuming this notebook is Shion's. It could be Rika's, I guess. But I mean, let me. No, she talks about the incident. And, yeah, her encounter with that creepy girl in the rain. It's absolutely Shion's notebook. No doubt about it. Let me review. What was the very first notebook tip saying? Yeah, just kind of talking about the possibilities for why he disappeared. Okay, yeah, like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really buy Shion's ideas right now on what the curse is. Mine still make more sense to me, even if, obviously, like I said, some details are wrong. Maybe, like, the 3 days part. Like, maybe it can go longer. Maybe that's why, I know specifically, there was a line with, the Sonozaki at the end of Chapter 2 when they stabbed Keiichi. One of the things they said is, I couldn't hold on any longer. Makes you wonder if you really have the willpower, if you can, like, go on for longer than the 3 days, like I was saying. Like, maybe it's just that, right? And I, like I've said, maybe I'm just too fixated on the number 3 here. Just because, like, the process of being demoned away, like, in, like, the old Watanagachi traditions, the Onikakashi was slowly submerged for 3 days and nights, right? And so maybe I'm a little too fixated on the number specifically, but I don't know, that still does make sense to me, honestly. Overall, this was a very good chapter, by the way. I mean, both of these, like, chapters were good, but this one in particular was a banger, right? So, I mean, this is all, like, the first one was all about Shion getting close to Satoshi, and then this one kind of starts with that a little bit, too. And then she kind of starts to learn about Satoshi's home life and how it's kind of wearing him down, and, well, she kind of makes it clear that she blames Satoko for that a bit, which is, I mean, like, kind of fair, but, like, you know, still messed up, you know, to be honest. But then this scene in the rain with Rena really kind of takes things over, in my opinion. When she seems to reveal that already Satoshi is experiencing that kind of craziness. And obviously she gives her ideas for what it is and how it's Satoshi deep down wanting to leave Hinamizawa, and because he knows that with that money that he's going to use for the teddy bear, that he could like help help her it could help him get away instead, right? He could skip town, right? And so Rena obviously believes that this is why he's being cursed in her eyes. I don't know. I don't completely buy that as the reason. But I don't know. Maybe Rena could be right. She could be. Maybe it really is just the occult, right? I don't fully buy it, like I've said a million times by now. But it's a very interesting conversation. The vibes in that scene were immaculate. Seriously, the music. I'm loving the music in Higurashi Chapter 2. Look, it was good, or not Chapter 2, like the answer arcs. Look, the music was good in the question arcs, but so far the music in the answer arcs is a complete step up for me personally. Like, I am loving the music here. right? Serious, like the vibe of this game, like I already enjoyed it, but the vibe is now immaculate, you know? Immaculate. So I mean, that's got to be all for this episode. To be honest, I really want to do another chapter, like, so bad. This is my second episode of the day. I recorded both of this and the last one today. And God, it's so late. I can't really record another one, but I kind of want to record another one. I should probably wait and just go to work tomorrow and come back, and record. But, man, so tempting to record, like, another chapter first, I am enthralled right now. This is fantastic so far, seriously. We're getting right into things. I'm really enjoying this. I hope so far you guys are enjoying it as well. I would be kind of shocked if there's not another episode recorded tomorrow. So you can probably expect another video soon. I hope you guys are looking forward to that. I know I'm looking forward to playing the game more, at the very least. So like I said, I hope you guys are looking forward for more, and hopefully I'll see you guys there whenever I do end up recording more. Peace.